Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 38. I have Juan Galt, who has been writing about cryptocurrency since 2014. He writes mostly at juangalt.com. He is also written for Bitcoin Magazine, and we're going to answer the question, who is Juan Galt? And we're going to talk about the FTX scandal and some other things going on in the world of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin right now. How are you, Juan?
I'm great. How are you doing, man?
You're doing fine, yeah. And you call Colombia home right now. So, how did you get into all this?
I heard about Bitcoin from a libertarian philosopher, kind of controversial dude now, but Stefan Molyneux. You might know the
Molyneux,
name.
yeah.
Yep. So he was talking about Bitcoin in like 2012, and I was just basically a broke 20-year-old. And I was in school and I was just studying and I started paying attention to it. And then by the time the 2014 bull market happened, I kind of knew, like I decided I was just going to focus my career, I guess, on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And I just started reading and writing, and I started publishing, and I started writing for Bitcoin Magazine, Cointelegraph, a bunch of different publications, and kind of went from there.
Are you sure about the 2014 bull market? I thought 2014 was a really bad year, actually, but
no, yeah, like the blow off top of like $1,000. Kind of what I'm talking about. It was around 2014, 2015.
Yeah, there were, because usually it's been 14, 18, 22 have been years, bad years to be in Bitcoin. Oh, by the way, this is not financial advice. This is not legal advice. This is not tax advice. Thank you. Anyway.
So 2014, 2014 was a bear market, but the top of the bull market was like November of 2013. So like to me, I was still kind of flying high on that. Like that year was when I was like, okay, I'm going in.
Yeah. In fact, it seems as though November is kind of, if you want to be a little more exact about it, November or December of 17, November of 22. And so I don't know if you can time the market or not, but that's often said that history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that got you into crypto. Yeah, Molyneux. Molyneux's always been he certainly isn't a libertarian anymore, but he certainly was also very much with his aware of what was going on with tech. So that got you into Bitcoin, and you've just been writing about Bitcoin ever since. I mean, and you were friends with Molyneux, I guess, or what happened to Molyneux anyway?
Yeah, no, I mean, I had contact with him. I back in those early days, I even went to one of his barbecues. He used to host barbecues at his house when things were really early, right?
Yeah.
And we both lived in Ontario, Canada, and so I met some people there. I visited him. I met him in person and stuff. Yeah, we had somewhat of a friendship. I like, as much as you can be friends with somebody that's kind of like going, parabolic in terms of fame, and then eventually kind of just did my own thing, and he helped me out here and there, and then eventually we just he just got too big, right? And nothing. I mean, he got once the Trump thing happened, he got into Trump, and then he went really hard pro Trump, and then eventually he got blackballed from all of social media, and so now he's just on Telegram, and he still has his podcast, and he still has like an RSS feed and stuff, so you can listen to his work. But he's mostly just back to like family stuff and like psychology and ethics.
I haven't listened to Molyneux in quite a while. He used to be good friends with Rogan, and I think he had a falling out with Rogan too. I mean, so he definitely had more of a reach than he used to. It's kind of unfortunate to see what happens there, but it's a.
Yeah, anyway, he went on Rogan's show, and there was all kinds of drama. Funny enough, with Ana Kasparian. And then Ana Kasparian and like the Young Turks had somewhat of a decent reputation back then, I guess. And now like Joe Rogan says like the Young Turks are screwed, right? But the drama had to do with some shit that she was pushing in.
So you were in Canada. It sounds like you've been pretty well traveled.
Yeah, I've traveled a bit.
Because you're in Colombia now. You're in Canada. Where are you from originally? Where else have you been? What did you like?
I'm Colombian.
I'm Colombian.
Yeah.
So now that you're down there in Colombia, So, what's been your take on the recent FTX scandal and some of the other? That's been the big scandal in cryptocurrency right now. What's your take on all that? How much have you been watching that?
Well, people don't learn, but like, yeah, it's obviously terrible. I mean, a lot of people lost money. I don't know what to tell you, right? Like, I think it's kind of cooled off now. Like people have dealt with the pain to some degree, but the regulatory response is definitely coming. It's sort of settling. I think he's gonna get a slap in the wrist. He's, rich kid from California. Parents are associated with the DNC. Like, kid had the playbook to how to, like, the free get out of jail, the get out of jail free card. He basically had it, and so I think it's going to be interesting, but it's going to shape the market for sure. I mean, the SEC started to just settle the lawsuit, like Kraken settled the lawsuit with them over the centralized staking. Yeah, I mean, crypto's gonna get regulated. All these shitcoins, man, they're Ponzi schemes. Like, libertarians love their fucking Ponzi schemes because free markets. But
Yeah,
if there's no underlying product or solution or service, it's basically a Ponzi scheme. And Ponzi schemes aren't good. They're
yeah.
not good, especially under false advertising. That's fraud. So it's very frustrating.
You put out a good article about how you can identify a scam versus not identify a scam, and you talked about pre-mining, and I thought, okay, so they created these tokens that weren't mined. So how did they create them? I mean, as you pointed out, every Bitcoin has been mined. I think there's and I think there's probably other cryptos where they've all been mined, but you pointed out that some of them were pre-mined, so they basically did just create cryptocurrency out of nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you do that, now I think the frame that makes sense to me is you have commodities, traditionally, you have securities, and securities are something issued
Yeah,
by a corporation at will, and they have to disclose the risks of their business, and it's all public, and there's all kinds of rules. And you may or may not like the rules, but there's at least a pretense of rules, especially in the public markets. It's a lot more there's much higher requirements of disclosure of risk in the public markets
yeah,
than in private markets. And so, whereas with a commodity, you can't create a commodity, you have to find it. And that's kind of the dynamic with Bitcoin. You have to find them in the proof of work, and nobody can create more. And so Bitcoin is very clear in the safe zone of crypto commodity. It's going to get regulated as such. It's already basically categorized as such. And securities are, they put a lot of let's say, responsibility on the issuer of the security, and they have to disclose risks.
yeah,
And so that's the way that makes sense. Sorry, it makes sense.
yeah,
You have an asymmetry of power when you have the power to create new units of account of an asset, and your investors don't. So you have an asymmetry of power. That asymmetry needs to be balanced. And crypto has failed to regulate itself. It's been trying to do it, or pretending to do it, for 8 years, since Ethereum, 7 years, and it's failed. It's failed. And so
yeah,
far, like, you can't argue against that. I think, especially in the
yeah.
in the face of TX, etc.
It's rather, yeah, it's rather unfortunate. Well, you can have commodities in lumber from oak trees or avocados, because you can't just snap your fingers and create avocados or create lumber. There is some work involved in harvesting the avocados. There's work involved in harvesting lumber, and there's work involved in mining for gold or mining for silver as well. And,
Yeah, exactly.
but when you have just where they can just say, oh, we'll just create this cryptocurrency out of nothing. And it's like, oh, it's just there. You didn't really, I mean, Bitcoin involves a lot of electricity, and there is a cost involved with creating Bitcoin. And what other are you a fan of Monero?
Yeah, I like Monero.
Yeah,
Monero's cool.
Monero. I mean, is Monero also no pre-mining? I mean,
As far as I know, yeah. As far as I understand,
yeah,
it's all been mined. The issue with Monero, like, I like Monero as like a VPN of sorts. Like, it's a really good way to build a privacy boundary between your other coins and exchanges where they're KYCing you, right? So it's
yeah,
good. It's a good way to VPN your coins. But the issue with Monero, the trade-off with Monero is that in order to have that privacy, the balances are all encrypted, and so you can't easily verify the supply. And so if there was a bug in the cryptography that led people, that there was some sort of inflation bug, it's a lot easier. It's a lot harder to catch it with Monero. And if somebody had such a bug, such a 0 day, as you'd call it in cybersecurity, their best incentive would be to slowly mine Monero over time, so that it's not obvious that there's an increase in supply. Because there's ways to like determine the supply with, I guess, statistical analysis, etc. But no obvious way. And so you could have slow leak theft of Monero. I'm not saying that it is happening, but you can't really easily tell. And so that's the issue with Monero. I think from an investment perspective, it's a less interesting asset speculatively, but I think it's undeniable that it has utility as a kind of monetary
Yeah,
VPN.
but as you pointed out, you said the cryptography, they could play with it and maybe put out more Monero tokens than they initially said, so they could inflate the value of Monero.
Yeah, in theory, that's possible, and inflation bugs happen. Like Bitcoin's
Yeah.
had like two basically, but they've both been caught and they've both been kept from being utilized, so they haven't been exploited, and that's proof that that there's a greater inflation bug security in Bitcoin than in Monero. We don't know in Monero. I don't know if there's been any of them caught. I think there was one that was caught, and it's not clear. Like nobody says that it was exploited, but again, there could be more, and it could be dark. So
Yeah. So with have you been? Yeah. But there's some other. You pointed out that Ethereum was 70% pre-mined. Is that what your numbers were, or something like
yeah,
that?
yeah, that's what it
So
is.
70% of the Ethereum tokens were never mined. So Vitalik, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I guess Vitalik just made himself rich by making these tokens and watching the price of Ethereum go up. But of course, if the price of Ethereum goes back down, he's got nothing. But yeah,
Yeah. Ethereum was pre-mined. There was an ICO. I participated
yeah,
in the ICO. It was a
yeah.
great bargain. It's 20 cents a coin. I
Oh
grabbed
yeah,
a little bit. It was fucking fantastic. Home run. But then
yeah,
like 20% of that, 70% or something like that was pre-sold to like seed investors in the Ethereum
yeah.
software. And among those apparently was JP Morgan, or like JP Morgan proxies, and
Ooh,
all kinds of other big guys. And so now JP Morgan owns a, last I heard, I haven't fact checked this since I wrote the article, but when I wrote that article, JP Morgan owned a big piece of MetaMask, and and I think they also own the piece of the biggest Ethereum node, which is the
yes.
archival node, which is Infura. So JP Morgan basically owns a huge share of Ethereum, essentially
Yes,
infrastructure.
of course. In that ICO, if you had bought $1 worth of Ethereum, you could have, if you'd gotten out at the peak, you could have been over $20,000 from that
Yep.
$1. So
Yep.
that's definitely that's Ethereum is still below 2,000 right now, I believe. But yeah, it's definitely a 20 cents was certainly and Ethereum hasn't been around, but Ethereum really was the first. I mean, it's still the solid number 2 cryptocurrency, but it does sound like it maybe is being more manipulated by its founders. And of course, unlike Satoshi just disappearing, Vitalik is still very much out there.
Mm-hmm.
Vitalik,
Yeah.
the creator of
Yeah.
Ethereum.
Yeah, and I make the case that he's probably compromised.
Yeah,
You got to keep in mind he was like 18 when he started getting into crypto, and when he created Ethereum, he might have been 20, and so he's a naive kid. He
yeah,
probably, like, I don't like, this is not to be mean to the guy, because I've met him too, and but he probably never had a girlfriend before, and like this and that, and I remember I was at a Halloween party, and some sketchy rumors were flying around. There was like a really let's say borderline illegal VIP party happening, and if they catch him, if they trip him into like a sketchy situation, they got blackmail on the king, and
yeah,
it would be very easy to find a way to target it, and catch Vitalik that way. And then
yeah,
if you look at the infrastructure of Ethereum right now, once they switched to proof of stake, they left their proof of work protocol, which was planned forever, and they postponed it for a long time. Eventually, they did it, And so the proof of stake, the way that you stake your coins, you have to either have 32 Ethereum to be a validating node, or you have to delegate you have to send your Ethereum, like basically lock up your Ethereum in a smart contract, and that's how you stake it. But the problem is, because of security attacks, like long range proof of stake
Yeah.
attacks, you right now you can't withdraw your Ethereum from that smart contract until like future
Yes.
hard fork. And so and so now people are now stuck on these staking pools, and the staking pools, a lot of them are based out of the US. So now they're OFAC compliant, so they're censoring transactions that are against American foreign policy, including many of them that were using Tornado Cash, which is like an Ethereum VPN or Ethereum sort of coin mixer. And you can still get like Tornado Cash transactions mined, but they take like 10 times longer. And which is, I mean, it's impressive that despite how centralized Ethereum is, you can still get Tornado Cash transactions mined, but it's very clear that it's being captured in real time Ethereum. And so I think Ethereum is very unstable from a security perspective, and I don't think proof of stake is particularly good long term, because for many reasons. And I have a very long article, like a 5,000 word article on this on my website, juangalt.com. And so if you want to check that out, but like Ethereum, I think I've actually sold all of my Ethereum at this point, and I'm just figuring
Yes,
out.
and to explain, staking is basically when you it's like going to the bank and getting a certificate of deposit. You deposit a certain amount of cash, you get it for a certain term, like maybe 2 years, and for that 2 years you'll get a certain amount of interest, and then but you can't take the money out. So that's what happens when you stake your crypto.
Mm-hmm.
It's
generally speaking, it's not necessarily like you don't necessarily have to lock up your coins to stake them in general. Like there's cryptocurrencies or crypto assets where you can do staking without having to lock up your coins. However, generally there's some lockup period, and usually the reason for staking is to like prove that you have weight in the system. So instead of like KYCing your identity so that you can sign or co-sign and like do like like let's say co-sign transactions or co-sign processes, saying yes, I validate that this process is legitimate or something like that, to provide kind of attention and review the integrity of work. You instead of KYCing yourself, you put up collateral within the asset of the currency. That's why it's useful. So there's assets where you can do staking with a machine that's also processing and validating transactions and doing work within the asset, within the ecosystem, and then you can withdraw them out. So you don't have to necessarily lock them out, but there's usually like an interest return of sorts that's emitted from the new blocks created. And with proof of stake, it's generally much easier to do validation work than with proof of work. And so it's a lot harder to compete with an entrenched proof of stake cohort or group, right? Like if somebody has 40% of the Ethereum or 20% of the Ethereum, and they just have one dude like managing a server that's validating Ethereum, there's not a lot of room to compete. So they're gonna start growing. Eventually, that's gonna have like a compound interest growth, and they're eventually gonna dominate the amount of the supply. Whereas with proof of work, you have to get the cheapest electricity, get top talent, get the newest hardware, and then like navigate the volatility of the assets so that you can keep paying your bills. Like there's a much wider let's say target for competition and for people to like dethrone you if you're a major player. So I think that's one of the main reasons why proof of work is far superior from proof of stake.
Certainly. One thing I've noticed though is, and one thing that's I think helps Ethereum a lot, is a lot of people will just go buy Ethereum on Coinbase or something and use Ethereum just so they can swap it for something else on a decentralized exchange or a less regulated exchange. Why are so many cryptos easily tradable with Ethereum?
Well, the main reason is that Ethereum, first of all, they have a first mover advantage within the smart contract kind of branch of crypto. and mainly because Ethereum was kind of created in order to make it easier to create other crypto assets. So there's like open source code that you can copy paste and launch an ERC20 token. You pay a transaction fee to get the contract minted, and so any web developer can issue a crypto asset on Ethereum for $100 type of thing. And so yeah, so you have this boom of crypto assets that are navigate playing with Ponzinomics and getting fancy websites and doing fancy marketing, and so it's basically a casino. It's a decentralized ish casino, and people love it. Easy money.
Yeah, so it's not, yeah, because it's not, you don't hear as many people buying Bitcoin so they can go swap other cryptos. It's usually with Ethereum.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, what you do hear about among traders, like let's say more professional traders, is they'll trade crypto to accumulate Bitcoin.
yeah,
But yeah, so yeah, but Ethereum, yeah, usually like people that are new to the market will buy Ethereum to buy this or that exciting token.
yeah. Because I mean, you have the exchanges like Coinbase and Gemini, which are basically U.S. dollars to cryptocurrencies, and they're you might only see 100 cryptocurrencies or less on Coinbase, but then there are thousands of others, and you can't. The only way to buy those other cryptocurrencies is with a cryptocurrency. You can't really buy them with U.S. dollars, and you can't really convert them back into U.S. dollars or anything else. But
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right.
So, what do you think about some of the people who have worked on Ethereum and now went elsewhere? Charles Hoskinson or Gavin Wood, or I mean, there's Polkadot, there's Cardano, there's some of these other projects out there that I don't know if why they left Ethereum, but they certainly have other things going on. What do you make of them?
I
Why
don't
do you
know. I
think
mean,
they left Ethereum, or what's?
so Gavin Wood made Polkadot.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know. I don't follow the Ethereum side like that
yeah,
closely at that level, but yeah, I mean Hoskinson, he's allegedly trying to build a more secure Ethereum,
yeah,
a more sound Ethereum. Doesn't seem like he succeeded so far. Like,
yeah,
doesn't seem like he has much of a share in the market. Polkadot is very popular, but yeah, it's also I don't
yeah.
know. I don't know enough about Polkadot, but like once you're that famous, you can launch a coin and make get it to multi-million-dollar market caps. So
Well, yeah. Well, you don't. Yeah, well, Steve Wozniak launched a coin, and he hasn't went that far with it. But people initially got it's Steve Wozniak, one of the founders of Apple, but
did
older
he
guy.
launch a
But
coin?
yeah. It's WozX.
No.
Yeah,
What does it do?
WOZ.
That's hilarious.
I think it's meant to be something like used for energy trading or something like that.
Okay.
It's right now ranked at number 530 on CoinGecko.
Well then,
Uh,
interesting. It's either a really good time to buy or you
yeah,
should have sold ages ago.
yeah, but it's but yeah, 530. But obviously, let's see. Right now,
How much
well,
like what was the
yeah,
high
well,
though?
right now, CoinGecko, we have Bitcoin, Ethereum, Binance Coin. I'm not including the pegged coins. XRP, Cardano, OKB, Polygon, Doge, Solana, Polkadot.
What's it called? Wozniak coin?
OKB is one in here. Yes,
OKB.
yes, OKB. That's the ticker. Yeah,
That's the ticker of Wozniak coin.
no, that's the ticker of this. I'm reading some of the top coins on
Oh
CoinGecko
yeah,
right now.
but what's the Wozniak coin? I want to see this.
It's WOZX. WozX. Yeah,
That's hilarious. It doesn't even show up.
yeah.
Oh, WozX. Okay.
Polkadot is number 13 on CoinGecko right now,
Wuz.
which isn't horrible, but isn't. It's interesting to think that the current coin market cap Bitcoin is still 40% of all cryptocurrency market, and Ethereum is 17.4, and Binance Coin is actually still kind of established itself as a solid number 3 too. It's 48 billion right now as market cap.
Yeah, I mean they have their own exchanges. They have
Yeah,
arguably the best exchange, biggest exchange.
yeah,
So, um, It helps. Yeah, I mean, Wozniak coin is effectively dead. It
Yeah.
when a coin starts off trading at its all-time high and then never returns to it, it's basically doomed.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
that's
just
what,
the early exit scam, a
yeah.
bad launch. So
Yeah, that's what happens with most of them. I remember looking back at a page of Coin Market Cap from 2013, and it showed 7 cryptocurrencies, and 5 of them you would have lost money on them, but if the other 2 you would have made a whole lot of money on them. They were Bitcoin and Litecoin. Um,
right.
were you involved with Litecoin much, or?
I never understood like when I
Yeah.
had some here and there, but I never got the appeal. People are like, oh, it's the silver to Bitcoin's gold. It's like it's not how it works, man.
Well, it sounds like people are wanting to make something faster than Bitcoin because they felt like Bitcoin was too slow. I mean, there's
Yeah, the thing is, like, it feels faster because the block explorers give you like a confirmation faster. But from a security perspective, like if each confirmation gives you X amount of security, then that's a function of time and energy, not of velocity of blocks. So, but that's way too deep in the rabbit hole for people to wrap their head around. So they'll just fall for the narrative that is faster.
yeah,
But if you look at exchanges, how many confirmations on a Litecoin transaction do you need? It's
yeah.
going to be a lot. It's not going to be 6 or 3 like with Bitcoin. So
Yeah. What do you make of some of these other things like the forks like Bitcoin Cash or Ethereum Classic? And can you explain to people out there what exactly is a fork?
yeah, I mean, Bitcoin is open source. A lot of these cryptos are open source, and so what that means is you can copy the code and launch your own version and change some parameters and have your own
Yeah.
network. But then if you do that in a way that isn't compatible with the open source community of the coin, then you become separate from them and you have kind of your own fate and your own ticker. And eventually you have your own price and your own destiny, right? And so Ethereum Cash was obviously a dramatic hard fork from Bitcoin. They changed the supply curve. So when they changed the difficulty algorithm, how difficult it was to mine, it was sort of Bitcoin has a difficulty algorithm that regulates it. And they changed that, and the result was that Bitmain was mining metric tons of Bitcoin Cash in the first few days, and so you'll see Bitcoin Cash for at least for a while had a higher supply of units than Bitcoin because they're mining faster. And then also they kind of decided to go big blocks and then so they kind of took a different development path. I don't care about Bitcoin Cash. I think they missed the
Yeah.
point. I think yeah, I think they just sort of played out a narrative that was just wrong, to some
Yeah.
degree. I
Well,
understand they wanted to explore it, but I just don't care.
yeah. Well, Roger Ver, people say he went from being Bitcoin Jesus to Bitcoin Judas, and I think he was just trying. He saw that people seemed to just be, buying Bitcoin and sitting on it, and he would hope that people would actually use it. But so, if you'd had, say, 100 Bitcoin tokens, would they've automatically become 100 Bitcoin Cash tokens, or would you just have nothing, or how is that, or how would that
Yeah,
work?
so the way that it worked, I had, for example, a little bit of Bitcoin on an exchange. I can't remember which exchange. And basically they would airdrop, like they basically copied the current balance sheet of Bitcoin, like they duplicated it. So now you had Bitcoin and you had the same amount of Bitcoin Cash. And
Yeah.
so it resulted in more value at first because there was such tension in the community that arguably the fork was beneficial to both sides, and so both of them ended up being worth more forked than united. But then obviously Bitcoin Cash fell off the floor and Bitcoin went to the moon. And um, but yeah, like I managed to put like a highball sell order on Bitcoin Cash, and I managed to I got like zero point 0.4 Bitcoin out of 1 Bitcoin Cash, which was basically the top, pretty close to the top. So yeah, you basically got
Yeah.
free money, if
Yeah.
you're selling it.
Yeah, Bitcoin Cash is currently number 29 on CoinGecko. That website is coingecko.com. It's one of the better websites if you want to check the cryptocurrency prices and,
Yeah,
and the
and
market
it's
caps.
it's really curious. During that fork war, the Bitcoin fees were like hitting $50 a pop, which was big reason why a big piece of the marketing for Bitcoin Cash having cheaper transactions, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And the Lightning Network hadn't been developed, so it was only theoretical, and so that was the thing. But like the what was happening back then, there's a lot of like one Satoshi per transaction per byte transactions on Bitcoin at the time, like a ton of them. So there was people saying that there was a spam attack going on, and this was never verified until China decided to ban proof of work or ban mining, Bitcoin mining. The moment that they banned Bitcoin mining, this sort of underlying layer of like very cheap Bitcoin transactions that were filling up the blocks disappeared. It just went away. And then over the next 2 years, we've had very cheap transaction fees on a Bitcoin that's, still active. It's not as active as other blockchains in terms of velocity, but people use it all the time. They use it even at a nation state level with El Salvador, even though they're using Lightning and stuff. And so it's curious, that what seemed like a persistent spam attack would disappear when Chinese miners had to exit from China. So I think there's some dirty play going on. I don't know if Roger Ver was involved, or maybe just like kind of like a useful idiot, so to speak. But not to call him necessarily an idiot, but because he's a very competent dude. But I think he was manipulated by Chinese interests, and obviously Bitmain was out of China. And anyway,
It's possible. I don't know. In fact, I've mentioned Roger. Hey, if Roger wants to come on here, he's welcome. I'd love to hear
Sure.
what he has to say about crypto, because he's done a lot of good work. He's been around the world too. He's a
legend. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's been a very interesting world in which we live right now.
Mhm.
How many times has China, China bans Bitcoin, and people's like, oh yeah, China bans Bitcoin again. Yeah, that's happened how many times? I mean,
Yeah, and there's still something like 20% of hash rate out of China somehow. So
yeah.
like,
I don't know if they're hiding themselves out or something like that. I mean,
probably, yeah.
Have you been to any of the big Bitcoin conferences, like the Bitcoin conference in Miami, or the Latin American Bitcoin conference, or anything like that?
Yeah, I think I've been to a couple of Latin American Bitcoin conferences,
Yeah,
and then I went to the Bitcoin Miami conference twice, I think.
yeah.
And yeah, I've been to a few of them. Yeah,
I
they're
guess
cool.
I must have missed you. Well, there's so many people there, because
They're
I
pretty
was
big.
I
Yeah.
was actually volunteering at the Bitcoin conference in Miami
Oh
last
yeah.
year. It's
Right.
not hard to do that. You can just go to the website and say, hey, I want to volunteer. So you put in some work, but then that gets you your ticket in, and they feed you. And I did get I did get some parking too, which was a nice bonus. But
Nice. In Miami, yeah.
yeah, on Miami Beach, where everything's expensive, I had an Airbnb that was like
Yeah.
45 minutes out. I just said, I'll pay less and go out here. But even with
Yeah.
the price of the car, it ended up costing me less money. But
Yeah.
it's definitely worth attending. I'd love to go to Latin American Bitcoin conferences. Is everything in Spanish down there? Or
Pretty much. I mean, the one in El Salvador, Adopting Bitcoin, was a great conference. I went to that
yeah,
last year in like November, I think, and
yeah,
excellent conference. And a lot of it was in English. They had two tracks, so they had like a translation thing for both sides.
yes, yeah,
I would go to that. And next year, this year is going to be again probably around September, October, November. I'm not
yeah.
sure.
Actually, I think El
I'll
Salvador is
definitely go to
one.
that.
I think Buenos Aires was last year. But yeah, so they love to know where they go around with that. I wish I'd known about that. That would have been certainly having an excuse to go all the way down to Buenos Aires. But boy, it's a long way down there.
It's a long way. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. You don't think so, but it's far away. Yeah.
yeah. So what do you think about El Salvador right now? What's going on there? I mean, with the Bitcoin is legal tender and things like the Bitcoin
hmm
Beach project and things like that.
hmm I think it's cool. I mean, I wrote two long articles on it, long form articles. One of them on kind of the politics of this situation, and another one kind of like the internal ecosystem of Bitcoin there. As far as I can tell, it's growing. There's a lot of people going. There's active meetup communities. There's a variety of startups. Obviously, it would be nice to have a bull market because then people will get excited and adoption will grow. But it's tough. It's very interesting because they are a dollarized country, so people are used to
Yeah,
dollars, and so Bitcoin is competing with the hardest fiat currency in the world. Because let's face it, the dollar is still fucking awesome compared to everything else. And
Yes.
so they're still competing with Bitcoin's competing directly with the dollar, but the result has been a massive rebrand for El Salvador. So people are like, wow. Second of all, this president has made the country very secure. You know, I mean, it's still kind of in a state of emergency, but you can't argue that it's not secure from, from the kind of this maras and such, so pretty nasty gangsters. And so yeah, the country's safer, so there's more wealth, more prosperity, less theft, less crime, and so the country is booming. And yeah, I mean, it's cool. There's new roads and stuff. I mean, he's built a bunch of
Yeah.
roads, and he's really like money's really coming into the country. I don't know how much of that is directly Bitcoin, but the branding, the rebrand, and the pool of talent that
Yeah.
we're seeing in El Salvador. Plus, I mean, if you're Latin American, I don't know about the United States, but if you're Latin American and maybe European or from other countries, you can get a citizenship there within a year, which means you don't have to pay capital gains on your Bitcoin because it's legal tender. And
Yes.
so that's huge, man.
Oh wow.
That
I did
is
not realize that.
big.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
game changer. So I'm thinking about becoming a citizen straight up.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, that's definitely a selling point. I mean, yeah, again, we're not, if you want to learn more about something like this, go to Andrew Henderson at Nomad Capitalist. He's a good expert on this. If you have lots of money and want to hire him, but he also has a good YouTube channel where he gives stuff away. But certainly there's I think sometimes it's I've realized too. It's just like the big cryptos versus the smaller cryptos. The fortunes of a smaller country can rise and fall faster than they can in a larger country. So El Salvador might be interesting because I mean it's the size of the American state of New Jersey as far as land area goes. It's a small country, but although if it gets too prosperous, what's the possibility that the U.S. might go in and invade or do regime change or something?
Yeah, that's definitely scary. I think.
Or even Mexico could probably do that.
Yeah, I don't think Mexico's going to invade El Salvador. I think,
Yeah.
but I think the CIA could be like keeping an eye on it, right? Granted, El Salvador's small potatoes. I think that's definitely a developing story. Like that makes me uncomfortable. That's like an area where I'm like, okay, maybe there's some spooks there. Maybe they're going to try to do some sabotage. But I think so far we haven't seen that. If Bukele gets reelected, which his reelection is within a year or two, if he gets reelected, which he's like basically the most popular president in recent history, then he has another 4 years. With 4 more years, he can take El Salvador to the next level. So like, there's a respectable chance that El Salvador becomes kind of like a Chilean miracle or like a Dubai, where it just booms.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful country. It's a gorgeous country. The volcanoes are stunning. There's pretty good surf waves and like beaches, and like it's lush, so it's a little expensive. It's a little pricey compared for Latin America. It's like twice the price of Mexico. Yeah, it's a little
really,
pricey.
That's interesting. I've heard from other people it's actually quite cheap. In fact, somebody told me they tried to create a reputation of being dangerous because they didn't want to become like Costa Rica, because Costa Rica has gotten so expensive. But also,
it was dangerous.
You pointed out with the volcanoes there, cheap energy, cheap energy, cheap mining.
Cheap energy, cheap electric energy, but they don't manufacture any gas, and so they don't manufacture oil. They don't produce oil, so they have to import oil, and they have to import a lot of stuff still. But I mean, if Tesla got into El Salvador and they built a bunch of stuff out of volcano energy, okay, So we could see that. I mean, they're building new roads. I could totally see that happening. Tesla is getting cheaper. Tesla cars are getting cheaper, so maybe that's the way.
Yeah, I love so many. I mean, I've now visited Peru, Colombia, Mexico. I mean, there's so many things I love about Latin America, but I hope that Latin America can figure out how to clean up all the corruption that's happened in so many of these countries, and maybe Bitcoin is the way to do it.
I don't know. I don't know.
There's something else. I've been watching several videos though, and it seems like to me one thing is that because Spain still had a feudalistic system, they basically imported this feudalistic system to all the colonies.
Yeah.
While America more or less almost had this small farming system. So they're still kind of trying to overthrow their own feudal systems here, where the rich people just, use the government to keep themselves rich and keep everybody else poor. And,
yeah.
And it's hard
yeah. Go ahead.
Economic mobility has gotten hard. But
yeah, economic mobility is tricky. I mean, it's not like in the States where you can become, have a decent life being studying, I don't know, some ridiculous, liberal arts thing. But here, you want to make some money, you go study engineering or psychology, or like get a real skill set. Like not that the others aren't real, but like something that's marketable and the market actually is demanding from society. But one of the things about that point on Spain is that it's a great podcast by this African American lady and Jordan Peterson, like 2 months ago, and she was saying that I can't remember her name, but she's like raised in California, born in Africa, etc. And
I think
she
that's
was
Maguette Wade, but yeah.
Very, very interesting lady, very powerful communicator, and she was making the case that the fundamental problem was common law versus civil law. And so with common law, you have let's say a distributed system of courts that build build precedents, and law gets built up based on precedents that are derived from empirical data and real conflicts in the real world. Whereas common law, it's basically like the government decides the laws, and that the courts have to judge cases based on the laws that Congress sets forth. So it's a very different system, and it's much more centralized, obviously. And it seems like the most prosperous countries are common law countries. And Spain was a common law country. And so we have a common law system in Colombia, and a lot of the Spaniard colonies have, whereas the British are obviously common law. Sorry, we have a civil law. Spain is a civil law country, and Colombia is a civil law country. So yeah, that's a big problem, and you don't overturn that easily. That's a revolution or a referendum or some other crazy thing.
Yeah, it's just interesting because if you look at a lot of countries that were English colonies, they're usually doing better than some of the other countries that were colonized, either by the French or by the I don't know. But
the French.
But there are other things there are other things I really respect about Latin America, largely because Latin American countries generally still value marriage and family, and America doesn't value those things at all anymore. That's true. It's just become a joke.
Well, and it's really funny, like a lot of the conservatives complaining about immigration and mass immigration in the States, but like, you having babies?
Oh,
you gotta have some babies. Otherwise, you're gonna, your economy needs talent. Needs people to do hard work.
Yeah,
so if you're not reproducing.
I don't. Yeah, I will never be sympathetic to that. Just, we don't want immigrants here. Yeah, I love immigrants. And they always bring food. Oh, you got these recipes? Yeah, let's try those. I've never had those before. Yummy! Oh, that's wonderful. Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, I've gone back and forth on this issue of immigration. I mean, Ayn Rand, Galt's Gulch had a very tight immigration policy.
Yeah.
Tight as you could imagine, right? So, like, I think there's an argument for immigration policy, and especially for like people, like making sure that people that come into the country have respect the values that are supposed to be held in the society. But at the same time, like, again, like, if conservatives aren't at least above or equal to the replacement rate, then how are they going to complain about immigration? You gotta pump those numbers, man. It's a rookie.
Oh yeah. And of course, Ayn Rand herself married just to avoid deportation. Did you read a lot of Ayn Rand? I mean, is that why you took the name Juan Galt, because you read a lot of Ayn Rand? When did you read Ayn Rand?
Yeah. Well, I heard about Ayn Rand from Stephen Molyneux.
Okay.
And so I read Atlas Shrugged, The Fountainhead. I think my favorite book of hers is what's it called? It's the first novel that she wrote. It's like a
We the Living.
Pager. The We the Living is great. But no, I don't. What was the other one? There's another novel there. So,
there was The Fountainhead. There was Atlas Shrugged. There was Anthem.
Anthem is my favorite.
Yes.
Anthem is beautiful, beautiful piece. Very short novel. I read her work on art, like the metaphysics of art or something like that.
Yeah, the Introduction to Objectivist, the Romantic
That's
Manifesto.
the Romantic Manifesto.
Did
That
you
was a
read
good
those in
book.
English or in Spanish?
English.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
I wasn't sure how many translations she's had. It's
yeah. I'm not
or
sure.
even
Yeah.
how much she's gotten around. I mean,
Apparently,
she's
it's like one of the most popular books. You know, like right up there with the Bible, like below the Bible, obviously, but it's one of the most
there
sold
was a
books.
poll years ago that the Library of Congress did and asked people what book has influenced you the most, and number one was the Bible, and number two was Atlas Shrugged. So,
Amazing.
but obviously there's so many books out there, and it
Yeah.
still wasn't that many because there's so many oodles of books out there. Yeah, yeah, that's interesting about Molyneux. I know Molyneux still does talk about crypto. I watched Molyneux's channel in a long time ago because he just went off the.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there. It's but yeah, what do you think are the biggest threats to cryptocurrency right now, and or threats to Bitcoin right now? Do you think it's just bad actors who pretend to be friends, or
I mean, I think crypto, as separate from Bitcoin, is a shit show. I
yeah,
think there's very little genuine innovation. I do think there is innovation. I don't tend to talk about the projects that I find in crypto that are good because then people will accuse me of shilling them. And
yeah,
so, but I do see some coins that are unique, that have a utility, that have a legitimate argument for their existence. I think you can create a crypto asset with integrity if you, again, don't do a pre-mine, like do it, make it proof of work, and then you actually attach yourself to a niche that's unique that Bitcoin doesn't cover. I think there's an argument there, but that's like a handful of coins compared to like the plethora of things. And yeah, Ponzi schemes are frauds. Like Ponzi
yeah,
schemes are at best gambling and at worst scams and fraud. So you
yeah?
can't, like, the fraud is a violation of the NAP. Libertarians should have a very
Oh yeah,
moral and powerful opposition to this. But yeah, it's just like
yeah. It
not
really
there.
goes a lot back to the American era of Wildcat banks, where just about this was mostly in the 1830s, 40s, and 50s when just about anybody in America could start a bank and
Mhm.
issue their own little currency, and and then they'd go hide out somewhere so you couldn't come redeem the notes for gold.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, if you look at that era in American history, uh, we had amazing economic growth during that period.
yeah,
Uh, we absorbed all these immigrants and just and there's so much prosperity during that time, and innovation and other things. It really was
yeah,
whether or not easy credit is a good or a bad thing. It's hard to debate, but it does lead to a lot of innovation, and that's part of what's made America so prosperous is we have Benjamin Franklin's, we have Steve Jobs, we have Nikola Tesla, we have people who just create these things, and people say, well, you can't do it. I say, yes, I can do it. And maybe Satoshi someday will become that. Although,
yeah.
do
He
you
is
think for a
incredible.
crypto project to stay honest, the founder has to disappear like Satoshi did? Or
It helps a lot. It
yeah,
helps a lot, yeah, and it helps that they're anonymous. But the anonymity of Satoshi is kind of a miracle. Like it's very impressive that he's maintained it. I mean, Snowden has remarked on how incredible, how impressive it is that he's still anonymous.
yeah,
Granted, Snowden was acting anonymously within a very limited pool of actors, so he was easier to catch.
yeah,
But it is very impressive. He's probably dead. Satoshi's probably dead. If he's not dead, he's a fucking monk, because he in theory should have keys to a million bitcoins, and that would make him one of the richest men in the world immediately. And but at the moment that he moves any of them, we're gonna find out because there's people like looking at this stuff. I would be very curious. And so the fact that he hasn't moved any of that money, like imagine if you could push a button and become a multi-billionaire at the scale of like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, and
yeah,
you don't, out of why? Like out of willpower, out of virtue, like you're just rich enough. Is there such a thing, So he's either dead or he destroyed his keys, which is incredible virtue, right? Like fucking big like legendary levels of virtue if you destroy your keys. He probably destroyed his. Honestly, I think that's what happened. He like because Bitcoin wasn't that valuable at the time, so he probably just destroyed his private keys and destroyed his PGP keys so that he can't access or reprove his identity. And now that's the only way that it really makes sense to me. Like that kind of discipline. I don't think humans are capable of resisting that kind of temptation over that long a period of time. But in like a couple of moments, moments of like lucidity, like yeah, okay, I'll burn my keys.
So that would certainly create a huge incentive to try to figure out what his private keys were.
You can't, like, if he destroyed them, like we know what his public keys were because he mined the first million bitcoins, and he slow mined them. He mined them at a lower difficulty than he could have in order to like give the market a chance to catch up, trying to keep that average of 10 minutes. We know that from like anthropological sort of analysis of the blocks and such, and the announcements in the blocks. And so he slow mined the network, and then he accumulated 1 million Bitcoin. He never moved them. He left them on the addresses. Most of them were left on the addresses that they were mined to. The few transactions that we know he made were like transactions to Hal Finney. He sent a little bit of Bitcoin to Hal Finney, and like other transactions like that, but like very, irrelevant amounts, I guess. Well, today it would be a shit ton, but like at the time, irrelevant, right? And so like as far as we know, all the coins he mined are still there, and that is it's amazing.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Do you think it's possible that Satoshi was a committee?
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible that it was a committee. There's a theory about it. There's a guy called Mike Lowry that's also a libertarian guy, and he argues that that's the case. He says that he was in the mailing lists in those early days, and that it was basically a group, and the rule was whoever moved the coins would have to deal with the legal consequences and persecution.
Yeah.
I don't really buy that argument.
Yeah.
Somebody would have fucking moved the coins, Like you don't have 8 people with each individual. Each of them has full access to $1 billion, and none of them do it. Like somebody's gonna do it.
Yeah, that's,
like, even if you give half to the U.S. government to buy your freedom, like you're still a multimillionaire. So
yeah, so the coins have been moved. So Satoshi, he's not benefited from these at all.
Well, no, not from those coins. I mean, if I was Satoshi, I would have, gotten
maybe
more
he's accumulated
on the DL,
coins elsewhere, but yeah,
probably, yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't realize 1 million Bitcoin. So that would be about, I mean, at current price, 1 million Bitcoin would be if he has 1 million Bitcoin, that would be about $24 billion. So he'd certainly be a very, in fact, I've heard also Ross Ulbrich would be a billionaire if he still had his Bitcoin.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Did you ever meet Ross Ulbrich, or did you ever know Ross? Or
no, I never met him. I met his mom.
I've met Lynn. Yeah, I've met his mom too. Yeah. Do you think Ross will ever get out, or what do you think will happen there? Or what?
I don't think so. Yeah, it's sad, but I don't think he might get a pardon. Maybe. So the rumor is that Trump was like Ross Ulbrich and a few other like dissidents. I think even Snowden and the WikiLeaks guy. They were all on
Julian Assange.
Yeah, they were all on the list to get pardoned on the last few days, but because of the January 6th thing, he basically was chased out of the White House a day and a half early. He didn't get the last 2 days of his term, and so rumor is that he was on the list, and he just didn't have time to sign.
I've heard so many of those rumors. I don't know if they were true or not. I mean,
who knows if it's true?
I mean, he had 4 years to pardon those guys. He didn't need to wait till the last day. I don't see Trump as a victim.
We need Rand Paul to become president. Maybe in like 10 years, and then he'll probably do the pardon. He should.
Yeah. There's a few people out there who are.
I'd fucking vote for Rand Paul.
Yeah. Rand Paul. Well, Ted Cruz seems like he's somewhat pro Bitcoin too.
Yeah, he's pro Bitcoin. I don't know how to feel
And
about
and I don't
Texas.
know how Ron DeSantis is, but it seems like I mean, Miami. I'm starting to call it the Silicon Swamp. They're moving all this Bitcoin stuff there and all this other high tech stuff there. It's going to completely
Yeah,
reimage the city, and it's already more expensive. It's already plenty expensive. I mean,
yeah, it's expensive enough. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Miami's cool. I mean,
yeah,
Miami, Florida's cool in general. I think definitely very competitive.
yeah. And of course it's not that far to get from Colombia to Florida either. I
No,
mean,
it's a 3 hour flight, direct
yeah,
flight. So I can be
yeah,
in Miami. The problem is I don't want to pay. It's so expensive, man. Like Latin America's just got me spoiled. Like I don't need a lot of
yeah,
money to be very comfortable in Latin America, and to
yeah,
like go and pay what fucking $2 an egg in Canada in the States where I can get them for like 20 cents here. It's like I don't
yeah.
know.
And Miami's quite expensive just in the U.S. too.
Yeah,
I mean, you can go to a lot cheaper places.
right,
But one thing nice about Colombia though is yeah, they can take the shorter planes down from the U.S. to Colombia, so you can take a 737 or an Airbus A320. They don't need to take the jumbo jets, so you get a lot more flights going down there.
right.
More flights, but smaller planes. Whereas if you go to Buenos Aires, you're going to be going on a jumbo jet on a much larger plane.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, Miami to Bogota is a solid flight. It's a 3 hour flight, direct. Yeah, cheap.
yeah, yeah. I did that flight. Yeah, I did that flight. I flew to Miami, then flew to Bogota. Yeah. How long have you been in Colombia, by the way?
Um, I have been in Colombia for a few months. Yeah,
Okay.
I was in Canada for a bit last year, and then
Oh,
yeah,
Canada. Jesus, what were you?
yeah,
Why were you
Canada
up there?
sucks. Just family stuff.
Oh, okay. Oh, you got family in
Nothing
Canada.
I wanted to be
Because
doing.
Juan Galt is not your real name, obviously.
I mean, what is real anyway? You
Yeah,
know,
it's a pen name, but yeah. So
what
I
is?
wasn't sure what you. I didn't realize you had all these ties to Canada, but yeah, it's a. But is it? Don't you have to be pretty much vax? Don't you have still have some restrictions getting into Colombia now, or is Colombia pretty much open to go get into it?
Colombia is pretty much open. Yeah,
So you
as
don't
far
need
as
to
I know.
have a PCR. I don't know PCR test
You
or any
might have,
vax.
in theory, you have to have a PCR test, but they don't check it. In my
Yeah,
experience, actually, they might have checked it at one point. I don't
I
know. I am
managed.
very vaxxed. I have all of them, so
Yeah,
the
I
lights
managed
are
to go to Colombia when in August of 2021, and there were no problems. So I always
right.
usually what I do is I email the embassy or in America and say, hey, I'm going to Colombia. What do I need to do? And said, yeah, just and they did say, okay, well, go here online and fill out this form, please. And I did that, but they were helpful. But yeah, so then just go down and it wasn't any testing or any vaccine requirements, so that was good. But then later it seems like they have requirements again. I don't know. It's all over the
I think
place.
I think I think you can get past it with like a PCR test.
Okay, yeah. What
Yeah,
where else have you lived in Latin America?
Mexico. That's
Mexico,
pretty
yeah.
much it. Yeah,
Acapulco mostly, or
Acapulco, Guadalajara, Ensenada in Baja California. I was there for like a year. Um,
yeah, Guadalajara is nice, yeah, and still
Guadalajara
pretty
is
cheap.
awesome. I miss it. It's a beautiful place. Very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and now you're in Bogota. So, what are who do you think? What do you think's gonna? Where do you think crypto is going to go in the next 5 years? I mean, what do you think's gonna? What do you think needs to happen to make it more widely used?
Again, like I hope crypto. Honestly, I hope most of crypto dies. It needs to
Yeah, or
die.
Bitcoin then, yeah,
I think Bitcoin. It's tough because we're in unprecedented times. This is the first time in Bitcoin's history where there's like high interest rates for a while. Um, there was a period in like 2010, I think, where interest rates went up and then went back down again. But this is the I think might be the longest sustained period of high interest rates in where Bitcoin has been alive. And what that means is that you can park your dollars on US bonds and get 5% back reliably with very low risk. That times the amount of money, that a capital that's interested in taking risk. And so it shrinks the pool of investment capital for startups, and it
yeah,
also shrinks it for speculative assets. So that dries up capital for crypto to some degree, and it dries up capital for Bitcoin. And Bitcoin now has to really prove its utility. And I think that for a while, Bitcoiners were getting a little crazy with speculation about the price, and the result has actually been different because the Fed has been raising rates. Whereas the assumption was that they were never going to raise rates, and so you're going to get a hyperinflation. Instead, they raised rates and started reducing the money supply. Then now the inflation argument is not exactly there, even though we're still having inflation, but hyperinflation is kind of being kept at bay, and the interest rates are high, so it's tough. I don't know that we can use the history of Bitcoin anymore to track or predict its future at this point because the fundamentals are so different. That said, you also have a weakening US dollar, a slowly weakening US dollar, where Saudi Arabia is starting to play with ruble and yuan. Iraq, I believe, just started playing with the yuan. There's a lot of countries that are looking at the dollar now like it's a liability because of the way that they cut off Russia and stole their treasuries and kept them from paying their bond creditors. It was really nasty what they did, and so that destabilizes the bond market. And I also have a long form article on this. It's the first article I wrote on my blog. It's called I think War in the 2020s or something like that. You'll find it on my website. I think it's pinned.
Yeah,
and it goes into that geopolitical situation. So I think it's tough. I think we have a ways to go in this consolidation. Maybe we get a little bull run up here, go test 30K, but I think we're past that free money, cheap money era. That era is behind us, and so.
But what do you think about developments though, and developments like to the Lightning Network or things that will make it? Because I think two big problems with Bitcoin. I think number one, it's still too easy to lose Bitcoin, but it's also still. I mean, I can buy $1 million worth of stock with lower fees than I can buy $1 million worth of Bitcoin. And I don't know if Bitcoin. I don't see Bitcoin being mass adapted until you can transact for as cheaply as you can transact stock, or even less than
right.
that.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, I don't know about the fees. I never trade in the stock market. I don't know what the cost would be to accumulate $1 million with Bitcoin, but it's. I think the Lightning Network is very fast. It's very, very fast. I don't know if you've used it. A good wallet to use with that is Wallet of Satoshi or Phoenix Wallet. Phoenix Wallet I really like.
Yeah, there's a lot of different wallets out there.
Yeah, and then the Nostr is interesting from a development perspective. It's kind of like a new social network. So it's kind of like a social network protocol, and it's an open protocol, so anybody can join it. Anybody can participate. There's multiple apps being developed on Nostr. And then it's Lightning integrated, so you can send Lightning to people very easily. So there's like comment, retweet, and like, and then there's Zap, and Zap lets you send 1,000 Satoshis to anybody whose tweet you like or whatever. So that's an interesting development because the fact that it's an open protocol means that there's a lot of different apps that can develop around it to provide different experiences to this social network. And because it's Lightning integrated, we're getting innovation. One of the cool apps that are pretty cool, I think, like remarkably interesting, is Found. It's an app called Found, which is it's a podcasting app, and you can tip people with Lightning, and people are using it, and it works pretty well. It's a nice design. So the idea of streaming money is powerful. I think with the social network stuff, we're gonna see increasing development of different apps and cool apps. But like it's a lot. Bitcoin it's a slow path to riches. You still gotta work for it still. So
one good thing, one of the good things that I often say that cryptocurrency is like, or Bitcoin is like open source money. You have. Just the same way that the Ubuntu operating system developed off of Debian, and you have all these other operating systems that developed off of Red Hat. You can have all these forks, and there's a lot of competition. I think one of the great benefits is that everybody's stealing ideas from everybody else. So you think, what do you think we'll have more of that? And. Or are people just kind of sticking around in their own echo chamber and only listening to themselves? Because I
Yeah, I no, I think there is an open source
yeah
ethos to it. Sorry, it's so dark. I don't understand why
yeah.
my
And
camera
the
is
other
so
and the
dark.
other good thing is, and in spite of all, a lot of cryptos being Ponzi schemes, it's not like you can merge crypto the way you can merge two big corporations. There's no way to
No.
monopolize it.
Yeah, well, actually, like if you look at what Justin Sun has been doing, I mean, he kind of
Oh,
figured it
really?
out. Yeah, he bought BitTorrent, and
Okay.
then BitTorrent had a coin, and then he bought Steemit Inc. and then like basically destroyed Steemit. And like he has actually been playing an accumulation, like a consolidation game in crypto. That's interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, you should look at Justin Sun's what Justin Sun's been doing. But
Justin
yeah, no,
Sun.
I mean, there's a lot of open source sort of cross proliferation of technology, I guess you could say, in crypto and in Bitcoin and stuff. I mean, the
Yeah.
thing is, like, you Bitcoin is very slow development, right? Like, I think what we're seeing with Taproot is interesting. I don't know if you heard about ordinals. You heard of ordinals, the Bitcoin NFTs?
Bitcoin NFTs? No, I haven't heard much about Bitcoin
Yeah,
NFTs.
so somebody figured out that if you use like a Taproot input, you can
Yeah.
fill up to 4 megabytes of data on a block, and so they started putting JPEGs on it. And so now a bunch of people in Ethereum are bringing their JPEGs over to Bitcoin, and all the maxis are and freaking
Yeah.
out about it. And then the Ethereum people are like loving it because they get native blockchain storage, like highly secure blockchain storage of their JPEGs, which they can trade for. So that's fun. So that's happening, and I mean things are happening. There's definitely things happening. It's just you know I think the numbers they're not as wild. Like we just
Yeah.
went through one of the craziest bubbles probably in history. With COVID lockdown plus them printing all kinds of money and giving people stimmy checks and stuff. Like that was
Oh,
a
yeah.
crazy bull market. And then like multi-billion-dollar JPEG trades, like holy fuck, are we in a bull
Yeah.
market? Like
But
ridiculous
I
bubble.
also sometimes think that, all the stuff that happened with COVID convinced me that this was the best hope for the world. That crypto was the only way we could overthrow this corrupt financial overlords that we have, or at least it's the best hope for doing it.
Yeah, it's the
You
best.
know,
It's the best tool we have to protect ourselves from their tyrannical ambitions.
because
I
it's
mean, we still gotta
regrettable.
play politics. I think
Yeah.
we gotta play politics, but Bitcoin is, it holds ground. Like Bitcoin holds
Yeah.
ground. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's unfortunate. Uh, objectivists in general have not been very open minded about Bitcoin.
I know.
It's rather sad because I can remember being involved with them in the early '90s, and they were all about getting on email and getting on the internet before everybody else was. But then I don't know what's happened there. Maybe it's because the movement's gotten older; they've just gotten more set in their ways. But
Well, and
I
they're highly invested in gold. They're like
yeah,
heavily invested into gold. So maybe that's what it
yeah.
is.
Most
Leadership.
Bitcoiners I know are not opposed to a gold standard, but there's also this realization that you can't really have a gold standard and have a democracy.
Yeah, I don't know about the democracy side, but I think
Yeah,
I think yeah, I think gold just doesn't play with the digital age. Like you just
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like it's just centralized so in banks,
but
and that was already defeated
yeah,
by the government. So how are you gonna undefeat yourself? Like
yeah,
how are you gonna build a gold standard if the gold standard was already defeated? It was
yeah,
defeated because the gold got centralized, and so we need something different. And I think,
yeah,
I mean, I like gold, I have gold, but like I think Bitcoin is Milton Friedman, I think, had a really good quote about it. He said, like, we need a roundabout way to make a good, sound money that the government can't take down.
yeah.
It's like 30 years ago or something. So,
Well, it needs to be easy to use. It needs to be easy to divide, and I mean,
yeah.
it needs. Yeah. Does Bitcoin does have I mean, a Satoshi is 100 million Satoshis go into a Bitcoin. Is there
That's right.
divisibility beyond Satoshis, or
Yeah, there's
is
theoretical
infinitely divisible?
divisibility.
Yeah,
Yeah, you could theoretically divide it on the Lightning layer. Like you could
yeah,
you could divide it on layer two beyond that. And then if you wanted to settle on chain, you would have to reaccumulate up to that point. And there's ways that you could have multiple people settle, accumulated balances on one transaction. So there's
yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, you could do further divisibility than that on L2.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. Any other developments that are really exciting you right now? What do you think is going to happen? In the next 2 or 3 years, you think we'll see more wallets? I mean,
I
you
think AI is the next thing.
yeah,
I think
AI.
Bitcoin's going to be around, but like AI is the next bull market. Like that's
Yeah,
just it's to me it's super
maybe we'll
obvious.
have more. We'll have also we're hearing about AI doing better at trading crypto too
I don't know
than
about
people.
that.
Yeah,
I think that's already been tried for a long time. I don't think
yeah,
that's that great.
yeah,
But yeah, people are going to try it. We're going to try
yeah.
everything.
It's going to
Everything's
be
going to
very
have AI
interesting.
built into it.
Yeah, I mean, well, I also hear things like quantum computing or Urbit. I don't know if you're familiar with Urbit, but there's some other developments out there that
Hmm.
could make the world much more
I've heard of
interesting.
it.
Yeah, what do you think about the direction of blockchain in general? Do you have an opinion on that?
Blockchains suck. They're terrible structures. They're very slow, very inefficient. They don't scale. If they're scalable, they're centralized. If they're not scalable, they're not scalable. Like blockchains don't are not good for much. They're good for Bitcoin, for how Bitcoin has used them. They're good for like authenticating the integrity of a monetary system, at a base layer. That's all they're good for. They suck at everything else. Cryptography is very cool. You can use cryptography for a lot of things. I think Nostr is a really good example of this. Like Nostr is this relay network where you basically have a private key pair, and then that's how you sign messages, and then you can sign tweets and publish tweets, and they get relayed in this distributed network. And you don't have a blockchain. You don't need a blockchain to do decentralization. Like blockchains are only good for accounting. You don't need accounting for everything. You can if we can if somebody figures out a digital, excuse me, a digital ID system that's not completely KYC, for example, or that is not entirely tyrannical, then you could do a lot of these things that people think blockchain is good for with just like PGP keys, essentially. So the word blockchain as a buzzword was invented by the banks to try to steal the energy from Bitcoin, and then like people are still like eating that up. Like this is like 2016 narratives. Like the blockchains suck. They're terrible. They're not good for anything. They're good for like a very niche thing, and that's to give you public auditability of accounting on a monetary asset that's actually decentralized, not that has like four nodes like Ethereum. So yeah, and Bitcoin by the same token is only good for one thing. Bitcoin is good at censorship resistant money. It's the most secure way you can store wealth in the history of wealth, in the
Yes.
history of money. That's all it is good for. It's not stable. It's not a particularly good currency. It's volatile as hell. It can be kind of hard to use. It's got a lot of downsides, but the one upside is you can have Bitcoin on a 305 multi-sig, and like the feds raid you, and they're gonna have to beg you or talk to your lawyer to get that money. Like it's not gonna be easy to get your money, and you,
Yeah.
you can eventually just die with it if you want. So like that level of security, that they can just break into your house and take out your gold, like that's remarkable. And then the
Yeah.
lightning network transferability. So like, but yeah, I don't think blockchains are good for much, to be honest, at this point.
Yeah. So any other trends you see that are positive or negative out there right now?
AI, we gotta fucking handle AI. We gotta figure out how to do AI locally, like sovereign AI stuff.
Yeah.
We gotta get a truth GPT. We gotta get a handle
Yeah.
on AI because
AI is AI. I think
it's
AI is
crazy.
AI is already being used for a lot of nefarious purposes, and I see it being used for more nefarious purposes. I forgot to. Also, while we talked about El Salvador, uh, another country that made Bitcoin legal tender is the Central African Republic. Do you know anybody who's ever even been to that country? I mean,
No.
I don't.
Actually, I did meet some people that were from Africa. I think from that country in El
Yeah.
Salvador, like the Lightning developers.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's definitely like a Bitcoin African community, like Lightning Network Bitcoin like African community that's pretty big, it seems.
Yeah.
But I haven't been, and I don't honestly I don't want to get malaria, and I don't want to get a vax jab for it. So
Yeah.
like I don't know if I'll ever go to Africa. Maybe one day, but
Yes.
I
When
just
I went to Peru, they gave us malaria medicine, and I took a yellow fever vaccine before going there. So,
right.
yeah, but yeah, Africa's Peru's pretty wild. Although as I've seen, I saw what poverty really looks like. Do you think it might be easier to promote Bitcoin in countries that are a little more poorer than, say, the countries that where the financial system is already well established?
It's tough. I think El Salvador
Because
is a good
people have less
example
to
of it.
lose.
The thing is, like, people don't have time to learn how to trade and manage Bitcoin's volatility.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're learning in El Salvador. Is like people don't care. They just need their money now, and we need to be able to send it now. And they generally like cash, and there's a big educational gap. And so what you need is like lightning apps that move dollar value. That's really what people want. People want the dollar. People don't want Bitcoin. People want dollars. People in poor
Yeah.
countries like Peru and Latin America, they want dollars. And so if you can give them dollars that have near zero barriers to entry because you're just setting up a Lightning wallet that's like keep hedging the value against an exchange or something like that, like with the Bitcoin Beach wallet, and you can move dollar denominated value at the speed of Lightning. That's interesting. I think that's actually where a killer app exists, but that has to be deployed. There has to be deployed at scale. Like you can't, like, people will figure out Bitcoin volatility and the bull market and start getting used to the denominations of Bitcoin over time on a bull market. In the meanwhile, people want dollars, and so I think that's probably what needs to happen. But in order to do the dollar thing, you gotta actually have some banking partners. It's a little bit tricky. It's not. I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunities in El Salvador because with El Salvador you can set up a corporation, get a bank account, and do Bitcoin business, and it's going to be kind of hard to unbank you. So I expect a lot of things will come out of El Salvador, or there should be coming out of El Salvador. But I don't know. Peru is tricky too because I hear there's a lot of, like, they're basically communists. There's a lot of communism or like sort of communist ethos in
Yeah.
Peru.
It's
So
unfortunate, but
it's tricky.
the main problem with all these countries, as well as Canada and the U.S., is you have all these Marxists in the in the college campuses.
Yeah.
All these college professors, and I hear the situation is just as bad in Latin America as it is in North America. I mean, and it's unfortunate because if you've never left America or Canada, you don't know what poverty really looks like. I mean,
No, you don't.
I went down to Peru and I saw what poverty really looks like. You can certainly, I don't know if it's quite as poor in Colombia, but they both had their issues over the years. And
Yeah, Peru is fairly poor. I think, I do think that there's an argument to be made for, like, there's like a Marxist or like at least a liberal left wing argument for Bitcoin because Bitcoin is anti-bank, is bank resistant. B, it doesn't give monetary control to this banking cartel that's like in a fascist alliance with the government. It's egalitarian, right? So anybody can use it. There's no questions asked. You poor, rich or poor, black or white, whatever gender, anybody can use Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't care. It can't care who you are. And so there's a very strong left wing liberal argument for Bitcoin that I think people don't really make. There's very few people making that argument.
Well, yeah, if it's liberal in the true sense of the word, but the way they're all socialists, they want everything centrally controlled, so they're not going to tolerate.
Yeah.
But in Latin America, you still see some of these socialists who really are sympathetic to the working class. Nowadays, they're all part of what you'd call the managerial class or the academic class.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the workers who actually aren't socialists. It's rather interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing
how it works. And at least also in Peru, it seems like the descendants of the indigenous are more likely to embrace socialism, and the descendants of Europeans are less likely to embrace it. But there's still kind of a divide there. But
I think a lot of it just has to do with wealth. Like once you have some money, you got to pay taxes. You realize socialism sucks. So
but you also
when you're broke, you're like.
But business is also. once you get rich, you also desire more predictability, and you want to protect. You become protective of what you got. So it's you become off. You're offensive when you're trying to make money, but then when you get rich, you become more defensive, just to try to not lose
Yeah,
money
that's true.
instead of make a lot of money. So
Yeah. So you try to get the government to build a moat out around you, right? So you do
yeah,
regulatory capture, right? And, um,
yeah,
yeah, I mean it's complex, right? I think the beast of the state, is it's kind of like the devil, it's like a temptation,
yeah,
it's part of the game theory, it's built into the human
yeah,
dynamics, so the only way to really contain it, I think this is where I'm kind of different from anarchism over the past few years, or at least from classical anarcho-capitalism, is that
yeah,
the beast of the state is this sort of it's kind of like a spirit. Again, it's like the devil. It's this sort of ethereal thing that exists in the human experience, and the best we've managed to do is find ways to like contain it with all these institutions. And what the reason that the American government was so revolutionary is that it built all these like structures, like all these bars around the power of the state, such that it should only be directed at your enemies, foreign and domestic. And of course it broke loose, but like, and it's just this beast now, this monster, but there's still a lot of checks on it. The states themselves have a lot of power against the federal government in ways that Latin American countries don't have. For example, like, it's not like Cundinamarca, right? Like the state where Bogota is can simply say like, oh, we're just not going to enforce COVID mandates. Like, that's not that easy. You can't
yeah,
just do that. And so like the separation of state and federal powers, that's a legitimate
yeah,
innovation. And you're never going to get rid of the people that are masters in the use of violence. There's always going to be people that are masters in the use of violence and thus can dominate anybody else at scale, like in general, right? And so there's a body of work of how to use violence effectively and efficiently, and that's the military, and that's the generals, and that there's a whole branch there. And there's no real way to contain that other than to like, I mean, there's way. I think the way is to get to decentralized power, and I think there's a lot to be
yeah,
said for decentralizing power and for
yeah.
like democratizing power, but
Yes,
it's
and
tricky.
that's why decentralized finance, decentralized autonomous organizations.
Yeah,
I don't know
and just having
exactly how
guns and
smart
like,
contracts play into this, but what do you think about DAOs and DAOs and smart contracts?
I've seen very few smart contracts that are useful. But again, like the Lightning Network, it's entirely smart contracts. It's all
Yeah,
smart contracts. It's two of two multi-sigs with a time lock on it, and then like pre-signed checks being flown around and settled later. I think we need an asset that actually develops like a currency before we can get contracts, because contracts need an asset that's denominating the value of things. And so you can't easily have useful smart contracts if you have if you have to denominate the value in ETH, and ETH is floating around, and you can't like you can't denominate a trade in dollars without centralizing it. And so it's like, why are you even doing a smart contract? Just do a normal contract. I think that smart contracts might come in the future, but in a future where there's actually, where maybe the dollar is weaker and Bitcoin is stronger, and then now it's starting to become like a
yeah,
Bitcoin standard. I think in the meanwhile we're going to see something like a dollar, like a Bitcoin dollar standard. This is an article I'm going to write soon, where like people
yeah,
just send crypto around, but they're settling dollar denominated debts
yeah.
and purchases. So
Well, that
that's
that
already
is one
happening.
thing that we've found with Bitcoin and other cryptos is it's much easier to do the transfers internationally. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Transferring
Mm-hmm.
money from your bank account in Colombia to your bank account in the USA can take a day or two, whereas
Yeah.
crypto, of course, there's still a lot of things that go wrong with crypto.
Yeah.
What do you think has to be done before we get to this point where everybody is using Bitcoin or using some form of cryptocurrency?
Well, I mean, fiat is pretty useful. I think the dollar is
Yeah,
very strong. The dollar is very strong. It's very useful. I
yeah,
think the dollar has another 20 years of life in it
yeah,
easily. And so, competing with the dollar is going to be tough. If the US fails to defend their dollar monetary position, and that seems to be like it's happening slowly, but it is happening and progressively, then yeah, maybe we get an acceleration of Bitcoin adoption or the Bitcoin standard. But I think this is a long run. This is a long race. Um, so I don't really know. If El Salvador does really well, right? Like if we see like a Chilean miracle in El Salvador, then it would not be hard for Nicaragua to be next, and then
Yeah.
for us to have like a domino of countries. And if the U.S. is tangled up in a foreign war and with a weak administration, or if let's say Trump gets reelected because he's running, right? So Trump gets reelected and he goes inward and becomes isolationist, then maybe we have some room in other countries to like grow this economic
Yeah.
this economic strategy. If we get it, otherwise, like if the WEF managed to consolidate power and joins forces with the IMF and like the CIA, like there's a Darth Vader
Yeah.
future that's not good. So
Well,
um,
and there's also, I suppose, the possibility that some of these 2-bit Latin dictators will maybe adopt Bitcoin just as a way of giving the finger to the U.S. I mean, screw you, dollar. I'm using Bitcoin. Uh,
yeah,
that. I mean, that, even though they're also inevitably undermining their own home currency as well, because they're because everything south of everything in the Western Hemisphere that's south of the U.S. is basically a shit coin.
yeah, pretty much.
I mean, there isn't one that isn't. I mean,
There
as
isn't one
far as
that's
I know,
good. The Mexican peso is surprisingly stable,
yeah,
but that's pretty much it.
yeah.
Everything
But
else
when
is
the
just
dollar
garbage.
starts dropping against the peso, I know the Mexican peso. That's when I know the dollar's really in trouble.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and still think 18 or 19 right now. So it's kind of hovered around that since the first time I visited Mexico. But yeah, it's a
Yeah, yeah. The
yeah,
pesos are surprisingly
yeah,
stable. Yeah, I think we're still in the wait and see era. I think it makes sense to do some dollar cost averaging with Bitcoin. I think
yeah,
it makes sense to get into AI and study AI and figure out. There's a
yeah,
lot of opportunities there.
yeah.
Um,
And
but
I don't know what we'll see. We're about 15 months away from the next Bitcoin block halving, so that in the past has triggered the major bull runs in Bitcoin. So
yeah, yeah, we'll see if that happens again. I mean, again, like every time it's less. So
yeah.
like now we would be going down to like 3.15, I think, a block. That's gonna
Well, we went
shrink.
from 50, 25, 12.5, 6.25, 3.125.
Yeah. So that should be interesting. We'll see if it happens again. Um,
Yeah.
but I think we have to see what happens with this war, this Ukraine war, this war with China. That's going to be an important piece of it. Um, that, that that's the biggest influence there, and that's
Yeah.
going to influence the bond market, and that's going to influence how stable the dollar is, and um, but at the end of the day, one Bitcoin was one Bitcoin. I I hesitate to like blurt out this sort of euphemisms, but like you still like despite of the price, the qualities of security that Bitcoin brings are still there, and even if it's not a major piece of your portfolio, it makes sense to have like at least 5% in. Like you should just grab a little piece. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really good conversation. Do you have anything you want to say before we go?
No, that's it. I mean, check out my blog, sign up to my newsletter. I write once a month.
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna move to Substack soon,
Yeah.
and
OneGalt.com. I think also, at
OneGalt.com.
least, do you still, you had a business also where you were doing emergency coin recovery? Are you still doing that or not?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody has any coins that they lost in some wallet that they can't get access to or something like that, or forgot their password, let me know. I mean, if there's a chance I can get it, we'll explore it, and we
Yeah.
charge like 10%. Like I'm not
Yeah.
incorporated, and stuff like that. You can get 15 to 20% fees on, like, let's say, incorporated companies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just do 10%,
Oh,
and once we figure it out.
oh, I should ask too. Are you? Do you prefer Trezor or Ledger wallets?
Oh, Trezor all the way. Ledger sucks. Ledger's a
Okay,
nightmare. But I think so. Trezor for like crypto people, and like it's easier to use. But Cold Card for like hardcore Bitcoin only stuff. That's much better hardware wallet.
cold card. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, Jade is not bad either. Jade is becoming pretty interesting. Jade is by Blockstream. It's also a Bitcoin wallet, but
yeah. There's been a
um,
lot of interesting stuff going on. So yeah, so
yeah,
okay. Well, remember, this is not
cool man.
financial advice. This is not legal advice. This
Yep,
is not tax
definitely
advice.
not.
Please like this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Please go buy my novel, Escape from the Village, and check out my other videos. And thank you for coming on and talking about the world of Bitcoin, Juan Galt. This has been a very enlightening conversation. So we are out.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks. Bye bye.
Appreciate it. Take care, man.